Alright, well this is the fourth taped lesson that I have for the Microdrive forecast, and you're going to notice a lot of similarities between tab 4 down here for feedback and tab 3, the alternative financing policy. The difference between the two is that in this one we incorporate the financing feedback of increasing our line of credit, which as a result increases our interest expense, which decreases our addition to retained earnings, and then increases our additional funds needed. Last time I described this as an iterative process. Your textbook and really the industry standards are to kind of estimate the effects. There's a number of different ways to estimate the effects of the financing feedbacks. There's one called the 0.5% method. And what that does is say, okay, just add 0.5% to the existing interest rate and calculate the interest expense using the expected level of debt for the coming year and the expected level of debt for the previous year and take the average. What your book describes in this case is actually a different method. We're using a calculation, and we'll go over that. If you scroll down, so this is the same as before. Using the historical information. And then down below here we include the new information of the financing feedback. If you read here, the step 1 is to, in the forecast column F, we start with the column without any additional funds needed. We use the forecasting column F to determine the unadjusted additional funds needed. Okay. So I'm going down here. In an F, this is without the additional funds needed. You'll notice the balance sheet does not balance. We don't like that. We like balance sheets to balance. So what we want to do is adjust for the additional funds needed. In this scenario that's up right now, we're looking at the improved scenario. On the improved scenario, we don't actually need additional funds needed. It says the additional funds needed is negative 90.2. That means that we're going to issue a special dividend. That does not result in any additional funds needed. But if we change this, so I'm going to go up here to Data, What If Analysis, Scenario Manager. I'm going to go to Maintain. If I do that and I go down here, we see something different. In this case, we have an additional line of credit. We need to borrow $113.2 million. The additional funds needed before the adjustments is $109.30. And then we're going to make two adjustments. First of all, this is LOC, the line of credit, added at the portion of the year. If we read up here, the adjustment that we're making, this is the adjustment factor. It's 1 minus the parentheses, block parentheses, then regular parentheses, 1 minus F. And what F is kind of when in the year are we taking out that line of credit? Are we using that line of credit and taking out those additional funds needed? If it's 0, that it happens on the first day of the year. If it's 1, it happens on the last day of the year. If we just kind of draw it up, that line of credit, again, it's like kind of like a credit card. If we draw it up during the year, we put 0.5 because we're saying we take it out on average in the middle of the year. Okay. So let's look at the calculation. 1 minus, block parentheses, regular parentheses, 1 minus that F when we take it out during the year. So if this is equal to 1, if we take it out at the end of the year, this is 0 and the rest is 0. So the adjustment factor is just 1. If it's equal to 0, we take 1 times the R, which is the cost of debt for the firm, so the interest rate they're going to pay on that debt, multiplied by 1 minus the tax rate to adjust that cost of debt by calculating the after-tax cost of debt. Okay. So that's what we're doing there. Down below, if we put in 0.5, and actually that goes up to here. So when we add it during the year, if we put in 0.5, we get an adjustment factor of 0.97. So we have is 1 minus, this is that F, okay, multiplied by C148. C148. Don't want to change that. So C148 is our interest rate of 11.5%. And so what this does is it calculates approximately the amount of interest that's going to be accrued on that that line of credit based on the amount last year, which was 0, and based on the amount that we're going to take out. And so it's an average. We're taking 0.5 multiplied by that line of credit we're going to take out, and we're charging interest on it. So that's what's going on there. If I change that to 1, so note that it's 113.2 if I take it out in the middle of the year. If I put this as 0, I'm taking out the debt at the beginning of the year. It's going to increase to 117.4 because we're accruing more interest. We have a greater interest expense, and we need more funds to cover that additional interest, that financing feedback. If I take it out at the end of the year, there's no adjustment. So we're not paying any additional interest other than just having that loan on the last day of the year put in place, but there's no financing feedback then. Right. So I'm going to switch this back to 0.5. As you can see here, then, what happens is that we go through, we adjust for our line of credit. Our balance sheet did not balance before, and now it balances, and we're happy. What goes on is that this amount, the interest on the line of credit, is added to our income statement, and like I mentioned before, it's going to decrease our addition to retained earnings, and that in the end affects what we have here for retained earnings. But using this method, we can balance it all out. All right, let me do one more thing on here. We'll go back to the scenario manager. We're going to click Improve, Show. So what we have here now is that we have negative additional funds needed. We produced more funds than we needed, and that's fantastic. And now we're going to pay a special dividend of $90.2 million. What you can see here is that I mentioned before there's not really a financing feedback. There kind of is a small one. It's not that important though, because we're just taking out the additional amount. It doesn't carry on beyond just taking out the additional funds, the negative additional funds needed that we have. So the surplus that we have, we're just getting rid of it. It's gotten rid of down here when we pay out this special dividend from the firm and reduce our addition to retained earnings. So in this case, our addition to retained earnings would have been $91.4 million. However, in this case, it's just $1.2 million. Not a lot of information other than that. If we go down below, the summary of key results for the forecasted scenarios. We've got the industry, we've got the current actual Microdrive. Again, I showed you how to calculate these before. You can go back to that. That would be on spreadsheet number 2. And then our Improve is what we have pulled up right now, and we see those results. You can also pull up the Maintain, going to Data, Scenario Manager, and we see the results there. Okay. That's it for this lesson, a little bit shorter. The next one is the multi-year, which will finish up our discussion on forecasting.